Hello and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be talking about the US Senate, and what you're looking at right now is a current map of the composition of the US Senate, where Democrats hold 47 seats and Republicans hold 53 seats. And today we're going to be talking specifically about the Democrats' math problem in the US Senate, why it's getting harder and harder for the Democrats to win a Senate majority, and why it's a lot easier for the Republicans to get a filibuster-proof Senate majority, and why the Democrats may not win another Senate majority for a very long time. So, looking at the map right now, again, we have 47 Democrats and 53 Republicans. Now, the two independents, Bernie Sanders and Angus King, they do caucus as Democrats, so I've included them in the count of Democrats. And looking further at this map, we'll see that some of these states do have split delegations, meaning one Democrat and one Republican, such as Wisconsin, Maine, and Pennsylvania. Now, looking at what the Democrats would need for a Senate majority, remember, whichever party holds the vice presidency, they get the tie-breaking vote. So currently, the Republicans have the vice presidency. They've got J.D. Vance. So the Republicans only need 50 seats for a majority, and the Democrats would need 51. Now, how do you get to 51 seats? You could get both North Carolina seats, you could get Maine seat, and you could get Wisconsin seat. That gets you to 51 seats. North Carolina is a state that Trump narrowly carried all three times that he ran. He did win North Carolina all three times, but again, the margin in North Carolina was very close. Maine is a state that Trump lost all three times. In Wisconsin, Trump lost in 2020, and he very narrowly carried it in 2016 and 2024. So this already gets the Democrats to 51 seats. Now, if you win Pennsylvania, that gets you to 52, sure. But then, once you flip that Pennsylvania seat, the path to 60 Senate seats gets pretty difficult. And why is 60 Senate seats an important number? Because in the Senate, you have this thing called the filibuster, and if you want to advance legislation, you need to get past the filibuster, which requires a 3/5 vote, so you need 60 out of 100 Senate seats. And the last time a party held 60 Senate seats was following the 2008 elections. Now, going into the 2008 U.S. Senate races, the Democrats held 49 seats, and really they held 51 seats, including independents, and the Republicans held 49 seats. The Democrats flipped 8 seats, which got them to 59 seats, and the Republicans had 41 seats. However, after the 2008 elections, the Republican Senator Arlen Specter, he flipped from Republican to Democrat, and the Democrats ended up with 60 Senate seats, and the Republicans had 40 seats. And now, because of the fact the Democrats now had a filibuster-proof majority, they were able to pass the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, without having to go through the reconciliations process, which can only be used for budget proposals. So, anyways, looking back at the Senate map, the Democrats, so far, okay, we've got them up to 52 Senate seats. So how do you get to 60 Senate seats, and how do you get a filibuster-proof majority? Well, you've got a few options where you could try and gain seats. In Nebraska, if you've got an independent candidate like Dan Osborne, maybe you flip Nebraska in a really good year. Maybe you get lucky and you flip Texas against a bad candidate like Ted Cruz or Ken Paxton in a blue wave year. Maybe you can flip Iowa. Maybe you get really lucky and you flip Montana, and you can flip Alaska if you've got a Democrat like former Congresswoman Mary Peltola. Maybe you get lucky and you flip Ohio. That still only gets you to 58 Senate seats. Maybe you get super lucky and you flip Kansas, a state that hasn't voted for a Democrat for U.S. Senate since the 1930s. And then maybe you get lucky and you flip another Texas Senate seat. But again, the pathway to 60 Senate seats would require for literally everything to go right for the Democrats. The path to 60 Senate seats right now for Democrats, it's practically impossible. But what about for Republicans? How can the GOP get to 60 Senate seats? Well, compared to the Democrats, the path might be a lot easier than you may expect. So let's go back to what the current U.S. Senate map looks like. So again, this is what the current Senate map looks like, but if the Republicans were to hold on to all of their current seats and they flip both seats in Georgia, a state that Trump won, if they flip the other seat in Pennsylvania and both seats in Michigan, a state that Trump won, as well as Arizona, a state that Trump won, and Nevada, another state that Trump won, and the other Democratic seat in Wisconsin, the Republicans, they get to 63 U.S. Senate seats. This is by flipping all the Senate seats in just states that Trump won while maintaining the seats that the Republicans currently hold. So the Republicans have a much easier path to a filibuster-proof majority than the Democrats do. The Republican path to 60 Senate seats is real, but the Democratic path simply isn't realistic or probable. But not only can the Republicans get to 63 seats, if it is a true Republican wave, they could flip a seat in the state of Virginia. Maybe they could flip a seat in Minnesota or even in New Mexico. Maybe they get lucky and they flip one in New Hampshire. That gets the Republicans to 67 Senate seats. That's a 2/3 majority in the Senate. What can you do with a 2/3 majority? If the president is a Democrat and the House votes to impeach the president and you've got 67 Republican senators, that's enough votes to remove the president of the United States from office. So not only do the Republicans have a real path to a filibuster-proof majority, they have a real path to having 2/3 of the seats in the U.S. Senate, giving them a super majority. So for Democrats, if they have a really bad scenario where they keep having red wave environments and they keep losing more and more seats, eventually they're going to be dug into a pretty deep hole where the Democrats may only have 38 or 40 seats and they have to claw their way back to 50 or 51 seats. And that is a very hard thing to do, and it would take at least a decade to get all the way back to a majority, especially with current coalitions. And something to keep in mind is, yes, the country, in terms of the national popular vote, is roughly evenly split between Democrats and Republicans. However, the average Republican state tends to have a smaller population than the average Democratic state, and there are usually more Republican states than Democratic states, even though the country as a whole is split fairly evenly. And as a result of the fact that there's more red states than blue states, what you get is more red Senate seats compared to blue Senate seats typically. And so the Democrats, the math simply does not help them in the U.S. Senate. The Republicans have a much more favorable and advantageous situation. And so for the Democrats, a potential solution would be to run independent candidates in red states like Nebraska, like Kansas, a lot of these Great Plains states right here. Although it is going to be hard to win as an independent, if you don't run a Democratic candidate, you've got a much better shot at beating the Republicans in these states compared to if you ran a Democrat. So if you guys did enjoy this video, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, turn on post notifications so you don't miss a future upload. Please feel free to comment video suggestions, and I will see you all in the next video.